You're listening to the Visibly Fit podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Wendie Pett, and every week I'll give you holistic, practical solutions for everyday issues related to nutrition, healing, functional fitness, and behavior modifications. As a naturopath, fitness expert, and wellness coach for over 20 years, my goal is to empower you to reach for greater health and to rise up to your next level of living in mind, body, and spirit. You were created with greatness in mind. It's time to own it. Are you with me? Then let's dive in. Hello and welcome to this episode of Visibly Fit. I'm your host, Wendie Pett. You know, you don't get healthy just by chance. No, it's truly a choice. You have to be intentional with the actions that you take in order to create healthy habits and live a life of good health. And so today on the podcast, I have a great friend that's on, and his name is Dr. Evan Queller. He is a medical doctor, double boarded in physical medicine and rehabilitation and lifestyle medicine, and is also a fellowship trained in interventional spine and pain management. Think about that. Oh my goodness. 1 in every 2 people have back pain. So he is a much needed individual. In 2017, Dr. Queller left his traditional interventional spine physiatry practice and is now practicing lifestyle medicine to help people feel better and live more by treating chronic disease through evidence-based lifestyle change. He's also the co-creator of the Dr. Q Fasting Kit, a science-based customized metabolic diet that mimics a fast and works in just 5 days. I've known Dr. Queller for a long time, several years, as we are both on staff and work different health immersions, mainly in the Florida area. But I'm so excited to have him because we're going to talk about how it truly is a choice to be healthy. And we're going to talk about how to optimize your health. So welcome to the show, Dr. Evan Queller. Thank you for being on Visibly Fit.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, how fun. Good to see you, my friend.
It's nice to see you too.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, good to be alive, right?
Yes.
Yes. Well, let's talk today all about how to optimize our health. I know that my listeners really are interested in learning more of how do I get healthier? How do I get better with living, with better quality life and with hopes of having longevity. And you really talk a lot about fasting and detoxing and that kind of thing, right? So I want to talk first about fasting because fasting and detoxing can, what I've seen in my practice is it can be abused and it can be kind of that thing that is used as, ooh, I just need something to get me over the hump. I need just a quick fix because I'm going on vacation. Or, you know what I mean? I just need to drop a few pounds and then I'll be good. It's kind of that mental mindset that is a lie that keeps people doing fasting and detoxes in an unhealthy fashion. But let's talk about the way in which you guide your patients through fasting and detoxing.
Right. So I think that the body can detox on itself. I think that term gets thrown around quite a bit.
Sure.
When we exercise, we sweat, we breathe quite a bit. Our liver is detoxifying our body. Our kidney is detoxifying our body. The idea is that fundamentally, as a lifestyle medicine physician, I'm asking people to make behavioral change.
Yes.
And so I really got into the idea of behavioral change and what motivates us to do what we're doing. And I came across literature like on the pleasure trap, where we're led astray. Our natural instincts for survival and passing on of our DNA are motivated by this triad of pursuing pleasure, avoiding pain, but also conserving energy. And so a lot of things out there, like like drugs, are the epitome of like the pleasure trap. It provides pleasure, but it's a trap. It leads us astray. But another one is also junk food, where we have this environment of dietary excess in the sense that it's this hyper palatable food that tastes really good to our palate. It's designed in a lab by physicians and PhD researchers that know what do human beings like. What is the moth to the flame? What is the
You turn on
honey
the
for the bee?
receptors to crave more of the
Right,
sugar, fats, and unhealthy.
right.
Yeah,
So it's
salt.
hyper craveable. It's
Mm-hmm.
hyper craveable, meaning it's not just craveable, it's hyper
Hyper.
craveable,
Yeah,
meaning
right.
you once you have it, you still want more of it. It's irresistible.
Right.
So you can't resist it. So that that food feels good and provides pleasure. It's convenient in the sense that it's convenient to just eat and it's accessible. It's also convenient in the sense that it's perhaps a little bit more affordable. It's subsidized. It's paid for by the government to be a little bit cheaper. So
Isn't
it's
that
convenient in that
interesting?
regard. Yeah. So
Wonder what all's behind that.
it's complex, right?
Yeah.
But it's convenient from I don't have to spend a lot of time preparing the food, but it's also convenient in the sense that the cost benefit analysis is such where you can get two cheeseburgers and a large fry and a Coke, and it's just more affordable. That's less work. So you do have this motivational triad of pursuing pleasure, avoiding pain, conserving energy, and we're led astray because we're in an environment that works against our natural instincts.
Right.
We want to seek out the food that provides the most pleasure, and the food that typically provides the most pleasure has more calories in it. We sense the difference between a juicy mango versus celery.
Mm-hmm.
Like our bodies know the difference between that. Well, when we have ice cream, that even hits our pleasure centers even more, and it becomes very difficult to stop. So with a habit formation, our daily lifestyle choices that occur, our behaviors that occur without much thought. They happen with automation. So it's a behavior that is automated as a habit. Well, there's all habits are initiated with a cue, with a trigger, not a cue like Queller cue, but a
Yes.
cue with
Yeah.
like different
QU.
type of cue.
Yeah.
So you have this trigger behavior, or the smoking of the cigarette, the behavior, and then the
Mm-hmm.
reward. Oh, I feel better. I feel less
Well, it's
stressed.
that dopamine drip too that's happening, and it feels good. It's like, I like that. I think I'll have some more of that. You know.
Yeah, and so dopamine helps drive is involved with our reward center, our
Mm-hmm.
pleasure reward center, and you have this super normal, meaning this uh, super normal meaning you take us out of our natural environment, or you take something that's unnatural and it's going like cocaine, and it's going to secrete dopamine in an abnormally high super normal level,
Right.
and that drives our behavior. That drives us to go seek out and pursue the 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 other mate of that you're seeking for, like as a man seeking the woman, to then ultimately,
For that sexual
you know,
pleasure as
uh,
well. You're
for the
saying,
sexual pleasure.
yeah,
That's
because
we're driven by that. But
yeah.
then there are also moods that are guiding us, right? Like, so you could have, you get your medical degree and you become, you know, proficient in treating interventional spine procedures, and you have success without fulfillment. You're having success and you're helping people, but are you really healing them by putting a band-aid over their pain with a pill, or literally over their injection site? It could work wonders. It provides a purpose in serving people with where they're at. And most people, that's where they're at, is what are you going to give to me?
Yeah.
right? Not what do I need to do to change my behavior.
And you were
And
in that
that's where
space, so you're
fasting kind of
speaking,
came in.
and so you're speaking from experience because you were in that
Yeah,
space. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And that
So I'm
wasn't
speaking from,
satisfying.
yeah, it was a lot of pain associated with that emotionally, mentally, having that dissonance, where um, ultimately, like I went into medicine to help people. I had an interest and a massive interest in health and nutrition, and had wrestled in high school and became connected with the human body and optimizing human performance and practicing yoga and things like that. So I saw the parallels and the overlap, but fasting came in as a way to detox from dopamine,
Hmm.
detox from the excess of dopamine, where a little bit of help can be helpful. And so um, the field of lifestyle medicine and honing in on plant-based nutrition, like there's this unifying theory of chronic disease, um, and and fundamentally it's the food that we're consuming on a daily basis that is fueling the body
Right.
is also fanning the flames of inflammation.
Right.
And how do you do like how do you do what what to do is correct? There's that saying by Maya Angelou, like I did what I did back then, but now that I know better, I do better. But we
Hmm.
don't always do what we know. Like we know
Right.
we should exercise, we know we should probably not watch this extra episode on Netflix at this hour, so I could try and get a little bit more sleep, so I don't perpetuate this vicious cycle of then having a bad night's sleep, being more stressed and intolerant, getting in a fight, feeling more stressed out and disconnected. Well, I'll feel better if I eat this food, this cookie, because it's part of my self-care.
Yeah. Or numb
And
out with a glass of wine or bourbon or whatever to,
yeah, and that's the trap.
right, exactly. And we both know Dr. Doug Lisle, and he talks about the pleasure trap a lot, of course, as well. And
Yeah.
I know we have both been uh, just on board with what he says, and of course, he talks about the not just like the sexual pleasure, but also the food and drinks in which we reward ourselves with that pleasure, but also, like you mentioned just a little bit ago. When we first started talking about this, is the energy conservation
Hmm.
that we're wired to kind of go into the least resistance. So I think that's fascinating to me that we're we're kind of just lazy
Right.
in a way, right?
Right. So how do you get someone to do what they
With the
know to
least
do? Well,
resistance, right?
with and it's not a matter. And so sometimes, like you were talking about, well, I want to lose weight real quick for the wedding, and
Yeah,
that's great. But it's also, kind of it's superficial. It's on the surface, and
right.
so oftentimes when something is sustainable, it has a deep meaning to you, and and where it all starts with a why. It all
Hmm.
starts with why, and the why also starts with the who, right? And that's
Yeah.
all about self-awareness, right? Perpetually, you know, trying to be aware of understanding who you are so you can make more skillful and intelligent decisions. So
Let
it's, oh, why am I getting triggered? Where, the trigger behavior reward, like why, what is this habit? Having awareness of the subconscious things that we're doing that lead us astray.
Yes, and I love that, Dr. Queller, because I mean, I'm usually call you Evan, but on this podcast, I'm saying
Sure.
Dr. Queller. But um, yeah, so I think about when I work with my clients, and that is what we do as well, and I know you do too. But it's, I think the question I want to ask is, why do you think there's avoidance in the beginning? of understand or going to that space of self-awareness? Do you think people are afraid of what they're going to find out, or what's going to be revealed, or that they'll actually have to change once it's revealed? What do you think in regards to that?
I think that it's the avoidance of pain.
Mm,
Change is uncomfortable.
sure.
It's not, the bad habit was once a solution to the problem,
Yep. Right. It was a quick
right?
fix.
And it was a quick fix, and but so that solution to the problem became just the way that you're doing things, but it's not easy changing your life around. So the avoidance of pain would be the social pressures of, we are there's multiple facets to this, but you live in a household where everybody smokes, right? You have like, if you want to quit smoking, you got to change your environment. Like a lot of these blue zones where these centenarian hotspots, it's not because they have, a juice bar and a Gold's Gym,
Right.
or a blue orange theory now, I guess I'm old school, but it doesn't have, it's the environment. You change your environment. We're a product of our environment. Our
Yes.
behaviors are a product of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's the way that things are done culturally, or within your community, or within your household, it makes a big difference. I love the my big fat Greek wedding, and she's like, "What, you don't eat meat?" And it's like, "All right, we'll make lamb." Like there's just that resistance to this
Right.
idea of not eating animal products to sustain yourself.
Right.
Um,
It's getting
so
better. I believe that people are getting more educated, and it's getting better.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it becomes familiar, and it becomes more of the
The
cultural norm,
norm. Yeah. Right.
right?
So you're not such an
And so I
outcast.
think that, yeah, so I think that the reason why people don't do it is 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 because of that motivational triad and some aspects of it. And so that motivational triad is I think a huge component of it it's a lot of energy, and it's also a lot of pain changing your ways, right? My mom took it personally, when I
Yeah.
didn't want to eat her brisket, you know.
Right.
Um, but but sometimes you take a bite of the brisket. It's not a matter of being perfect. It's not the bite of the brisket that is going to compromise your health. It just and then it becomes, that's where you kind of cross the line between whole plant food nutrition and veganism. Veganism is an ideology of not consuming any animal products. A whole plant food, or a whole
whole
plant,
food, whole food,
rich
plant based.
diet,
Yep. Hmm.
whole plant based, whole food plant based is what foods you're adding in, not necessarily what you're taking out. Um, but but the big divide for me, though, is, as a physician, is, veganism doesn't necessarily entail being healthy,
Hmm.
and it doesn't really have anything specifically to do with being healthy, other than you can't be healthy on a ravaged planet.
Right.
So perhaps there's an environmental conservation to it all. But whole plant food is the angle of being healthy, and using plant-based nutrition and food as medicine to help promote wellness and health, and reverse and treat a lot of these chronic diseases that are fueled by unhealthy foods, processed foods. And so I think that people don't follow through on making that change, because perhaps there isn't enough pain, right? Pain is an interesting motivator. There, there isn't, a fear. There isn't enough fear of disability or debility,
Hmm.
and or a fear of death. Like those things do motivate people, but when it's inspired in spirit, when it's inspired by love, I love my family. I want to give back to the world around me, and not be a black hole that's sucking things in because of it weighs so much, it pulls things in. But when you're
Like an
a
energy vampire.
lighthouse, yeah, but when you're
Right.
a light and you're giving, and it's like you're doing it because you're not putting on the oxygen mask because you're selfish. You're putting it on so you could be of service.
Yes.
And so that is so so it's that, people then start to feel good, so like just that 5 day or that 1 day reset or that 5 day jumpstart or that fast, if it's enough to kind of get people to feel a little bit better, because no one could tell you how good you feel other than your own body,
Hmm.
then you have this positive trigger, because that's what motivates us to kind of start that habit. It felt good. I
Yeah.
got that hit from that ice cream or cocaine
Yeah.
or whatever it was, and that's what makes you continue to seek it out further. But and it's providing pleasure, not happiness,
That's
right?
good.
It
Yeah, right.
provides a moment of pleasure, but it's not something that's really sustained, and it's not something that's fulfilling.
Right.
And then you have, yeah.
And I think sometimes people just don't know what feeling healthy and well really feels like. So they don't even know what to expect, or maybe, they've attempted and tried so many things before that they just don't want to fail at one more thing. So there's that kind of thing. And you talk about the pain part. I usually say when the pain is great enough, people will change. But the thing is everyone has different pain thresholds. So what's
Hmm.
painful for you may be totally different from somebody else listening, and so you got to know your threshold. But you are one of the kindest, most patient, most just loving people I know. And I'm not saying that just to say it. I mean, I'm serious. I've been around you enough
Thank
and
you.
experienced uh, working with you at these health immersions, and I'm just always impressed by how you are very present with the people you're speaking with, and you're very kind and just, like I said, patient, because I think you I don't know, you just help guide people through their maybe stuck point, because sometimes people are in this emotional loop in their mind, or that their feelings are causing anxiety around something, but you just kind of help walk them through to that next level. And so I know that your patients have appreciated that with you, all that have worked with you in the past. But I know you just really
Thank
been
you.
focused recently, what was the last couple years actually, on this 5 day fast, especially to really help people get this jump start and to make the shift that they need to shift in. Because you, just like me, we have a desire for people to be med free, pain free, disease free. And the way to do that is to change your habits and to get a reset. And so that's your goal with that. How do people find out about this 5 day fast? What website can they go to?
I have it's Dr. Q Longevity.life,
Okay, perfect. Dr. Q.
DOCTOR,
I'll put that in the
Q with
show
my
notes.
last name, Queller. Yeah,
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Q
yeah.
Longevity.life. And so, yeah, like it,
Perfect.
yeah. Did you want to ask something? Because
No,
there
I
was a
just wanted to
couple of
say
things that
that.
came to mind.
Yeah, no, you can talk on that. I just wanted to let people know I'll put that in the show notes. So if you're driving and you can't write that down, I'll keep it in the show notes so you'll find it. So go
Thank you.
ahead.
Thank you.
Hmm.
I'd love to be able to support some people through that if they're
Yeah.
interested. So there's the idea of like this micro habit or atomic habit. It's like, just starting small, like start with where you're at. Like, hey, I never exercised before. Well, can you go for a 10-minute walk?
Right.
Right? Like, so it's making it, you know, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time sensitive,
And then
right?
do
Like the
some habit
SMART
stacking.
goal. Right. There's habit stacking. There's lots, having the making it taking making it more convenient in the sense that, pursuing pleasure, avoiding pain, and conserving energy. It's like have the running shoes out, have the outfit out and ready. Helps. There's lots of different ways to try and form healthy habits, but I think that it's sometimes a matter of trying to you know, find something that what are you willing to do? Like asking yourself, what are you willing to do? And to kind of get yourself started. And I think that it doesn't have to be all in all the time.
That can
It
be
just depends
overwhelming,
on
right?
where someone's at. It could be overwhelming. So you have like this concept of like, well, an ounce of prevention is a pound for cure, but right, like, but sometimes when you're really sick, it's like a pound of prevention is a pound of cure. It's like there's that concept of like spilling the apple cart.
Mm-hmm.
When it's all contained, it's all right. But once that apple cart spills over, it's very difficult to get all the apples back on the cart.
Right.
And our health is kind of tenuous like that. It's like an apple cart. And when one apple falls, you could put it back. But when it's all spilling over, it's very difficult to maintain your health. And it sometimes requires quite a bit, like more than just, cutting out the Coca-Cola. It's really going all in. And it takes quite a bit. And that's where the idea behind the Dr. Q fast was developed. It was kind of keeping those things in mind, like how do you get someone to do something that I want them to do, and it includes eating the whole plant foods, and it is a short period of time,
Yeah.
and
So
it's
even though you're
enough
fasting,
to,
you're still eating.
yeah, I mean, to fast means to do without,
Right.
but fasting is very difficult to do, and to reap the benefits of, let's say, a water fast, usually after about 2 days, more than 90% of people back out of it because of our own survival instincts that overpower our initial drive on day one, where this is really easy. By day two, our hunger mechanisms and withdrawal from the things that we're addicted to start to kick in, and it influences our behavior. That dopamine kicks in, and we want to seek out the foods that provide us that relief, that provide us that pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's so good. You talked a little bit about that apple cart, and if all start to fall, then it's tough to put them all back. And kind of your apple cart, if you will, is your pillars that you talk about, the pillars of the Dr. Q longevity, and these are pillars that I stand for as well. I mean, this is this is all very important. So it's eating well, which is what we're talking about. And if you need to do a fast and then eat well with it, great. Move more, so exercising, and it doesn't just have to be like aerobics. It means walking, moving more, right?
Yeah,
Sleeping more, love more, stress less, avoid risky substances, know thyself. And so I kind of want to unpack these a little bit more. We've already
sure.
talked a little bit about the eat well, but let's go to the move more. I just alluded to the fact that it doesn't have to be some run a marathon or whatever. Let's talk about the move more a little bit and how that can just be just functional living.
Right. So there are the same underlying mechanisms of chronic disease for, let's say, high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, um, even with chronic inflammation that's causing chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
There's chronic inflammation, there's immune dysfunction, there's an overdrive of our sympathetic nervous system, the stress response. So we have these excess of stress hormones, our gene expression, our detoxifying mechanisms, our telomeres and telomerase are affected, our microbiome, all these biochemical pathways that we study in a reductionist type of manner. There's a thin red line through all of them for all these chronic diseases. Like these
Mm-hmm.
are affected with diabetes, they're affected with autoimmunity, they're affected with high blood pressure and heart disease. And so the foods that we eat can quell food is information. It can quell and calm down the chronic inflammation and feed our microbiome and turn on healthy genes and turn off the bad genes through the sirtuins. It affects telomerase. Well, it so happens to be, Wendy, that exercise and physical activity does the same thing.
Yes.
It improves the blood supply. It improves our microbiome. Our microbiome is essentially an organ that is within our body, on my eyelids, on my skin, but primarily within my digestive tract is bacteria, viruses, and parasites that help digest food, but they also, it's almost like a hormone system as well. It's another gland. It's
Right.
part of
And
the
most
endocrine
people
system. And it's,
only think of it as the gut microbiome. They don't think of it as, you know what I mean? The whole unit of the microbiome. They just only think of gut.
yeah, yeah, within my liver that
Mm-hmm.
then goes into the biliary tree, into the gallbladder, and makes bile acids that break down fat. That has a microbiome. When we exercise, we turn on this anti-aging, regeneration type of effect.
As long as
We
you're not
stimulate.
over exercising.
Well, it's balance, right? Like, you
Right,
shouldn't
right.
overeat broccoli.
There
You
you
shouldn't
go.
overeat. You shouldn't overconsume too much water. You cause electrolyte disturbances. You
Right.
shouldn't get too much sun,
There you go.
because then there's too much damage, and then our body
100%.
can't and we have immune dysfunction. Like, why don't I get skin cancer every time I walk outside? Because my immune system is able to repair the damage.
Right, right.
But eventually, when you look
Breaks
at
down.
aging as a disease,
Mm-hmm.
our resilience to those repair mechanisms get affected. And so these pillars of, you wanted to talk about physical activity, and I just get so excited because all of them help, like eating
Yes.
well, moving
Sleep,
more, sleeping. Like,
big
if
one.
we're deprived of sleep, you can't,
Forget about
I can,
it. I can't even
I
function.
can't, I can't eat enough broccoli and kale,
I know.
or
I just
enough
can't.
healthy foods to counteract the negative effects of sleep deprivation, even
Right.
after just one night. So yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you say, real quick? Because I know some people that work the night shift, for instance.
Mm.
What would you say to that person that's listening that might be working the night shift that already is at a disadvantage because their circadian rhythms are all kind of out of whack because of their timing? What would you say to them regarding their sleep patterns and because they're already having a hard time sleeping all throughout anyway? Um,
Right.
what would you say to them of how they can maybe better balance that?
Well, what I would say to them would be different than what I would say to you, since they're not here listening to me. Because, and I guess I would say both. I mean, one is to be kind of sensitive, like, to the reality is that perhaps they can't change their job,
Yeah.
but it might not be that much different to the athlete that is very physically active, but they're compromising their health for the sport. They're
Mm.
not in the centenarian Olympics trying to maintain their function and health for the long term. So you
That's
have, like,
good.
a prime example would be like a football player, and they get, or a boxer. They really get beat up, and it's and it compromises their longevity,
Sure.
which is their health span, not just their lifespan, but it's, their health. So when someone has a job that is, making them depressed and burnt out, then they need to try and think about, well,
Reevaluate
what do
maybe.
you need to, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
reassess.
Yeah.
And, but let's say someone is in a situation and circumstances are such where it's very difficult for them to just say, oh, I'll just change my job. Like,
Right.
they're a nurse and they work the night shift.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's a matter of really trying to dial that in as much as they can in regards to getting those 7 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
creating an environment creating sleep hygiene in their home as
Get
much as they
some
can,
blackout
to use.
shades.
making it cool,
Yeah.
having white noise if that's what helps,
Hmm.
using earplugs if that's what's needed, and being in that bed for at least 8 hours,
Yeah.
so they
That's
could
good.
at least get that 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
That's good.
But it's not an outside of saying, well, don't change jobs.
Yeah.
But if they have to stick with the job, it's a matter of really just trying to you're just on a different time zone, and that is a stressor. Just like another job could expose someone to poor air quality. It's
Yeah.
going to stress the system and compromise the system. It's unfortunate that that's people work the night shift, but that is
Right.
the reality. There's an increased risk of cancer, increased risk of dementia, increased risk of diabetes. Um, so it stresses the increased risk of cardiovascular disease, increased risk of all-cause mortality. It's the same as being sedentary, like the same thing with being sedentary, not eating healthfully. It causes all those mechanisms that are underlying all chronic diseases.
Yeah, that's so good. So definitely, do your best to have good sleep hygiene and work within the sphere that you are in if you can't change your job. But it's even more important. Well, not more important. it's important that you really if you work nights to hone in and master the other pillars. You know what I mean? So that you don't have extra stress on top of
Mhm.
the unhealthy sleep patterns that you may be experiencing. So anyway, that was just curious as an example. Um, the next one that you have on here is love more, stress less, and I think we've talked a little bit about stress, of course, but let's talk about the love more because love can really do wonders for the body. And
Am I blushing?
are you blushing? A
I
little
don't know.
bit.
We're
Yeah.
talking about love.
Oh, you're so funny. Yes, let's talk a little bit about love and how it really does turn on healthy, gene receptors and releases healthy hormones and that kind of thing. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, love. I mean, when we think about love, we oftentimes would point to our heart. We're thinking about our emotions,
Mm-hmm.
how we're maneuvering through life and engaging with people. It seems like when there's lots of different definitions of love, and I think that
We kind of
I
overuse the
think that
word love
when we use
these
the
days.
we over yeah,
Hmm.
um, but I think that it's the way that I like to think about it from like a health perspective, I guess, would be where you're feeling connected. You're feeling like, we're all part of this like human condition together.
Hmm.
And um, so love, like perhaps, ties into our emotions, you know,
Yes.
and, um, and what inspires us and what makes us feel connected and gives our life a sense of meaning and purpose,
Hmm.
of wanting to take on like the responsibility of what you value to kind of care for it and nurture it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like you can't take care of anything if you don't listen to it carefully, if you don't touch it gently. You can't, the harder you are on anything, the faster you're going to wear it out.
Hmm.
So, if you want to take care of anything, you have to listen to what it's saying and listen to
Kind.
its needs. So I think
Mhm.
that love, um, I think fundamentally is that why,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is that why behind what you're doing,
Yeah.
because that's what gives it meaning in that regards.
But our
And
bodies do
oftentimes,
know, right? I mean, our bodies know at the cellular level if we're experiencing love versus fear and hate and anger and all those more negative emotions. I mean, our cells respond according to that. It's kind of like if you've got two plants, and you're speaking love and there's music that is classical music and it's all wonderful over one, and then you're yelling at the other plant, it will literally die. So our bodies are the same and basically in response to
sure,
right.
sure. I've heard that
Yeah.
quite a bit, and it's probably true. But I could think of even, with some of the literature in regards to people that are feeling isolated
Mm.
and depressed, have increased risks for cancer and all-cause mortality significantly.
Yes.
It's almost as bad as smoking.
Right.
And so I think when I think of of love, I think it's having that interconnectivity. And yes, there is a physiologic response. There is down regulation of the sympathetic nervous system. There is a shift of in our brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we are able to, when we get angry, and we get emotionally driven, we go primal, and that part of our brain turns off.
Mm.
That helps us, think about the long term and make those executive decisions that are more controlled and calm and center. We get
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
We get,
Yeah.
so I think when I think of love, like, you're kind of staying centered in the eye of the storm, and you can more skillfully respond to life. And so
Absolutely.
that's why it's like, stillness is the key,
Yeah.
ego is the enemy, obstacle is the way. You think of these euphemisms, but they're true in
Right.
that regards. And there's science supporting it,
There's scripture
and
supporting it.
scripture
If
supporting it.
I
Yeah,
were to go there,
it's a
like I'm just
common
gonna
theme.
yeah, right. So John 15:12, I'm just gonna say, it says, "My command is this: love each other as I have loved you." And God is love. I mean, He is the highest form of love, and so we are created in His image. And so when we start to think of it on those terms, it's like, I don't know. It just kind of, I get really geeked out and excited about it. But I do want to go there quickly, spiritually speaking, talking
Sure.
about faith and talk about your faith. And I know you were brought up maybe in a Jewish household. Is that right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was bar
And
mitzvahed, and
yeah, there you
mhm.
go. Cool.
So there's some people doing yard work outside.
Oh,
It's a
that's
little
all right.
noisy.
That's all right. We'll wave to them.
All right.
But yeah, so you were brought up Jewish, and I know that myself and a few other people, we have shared Jesus with you, and you're definitely open to hearing more, and you've had some great experiences. How are you nurturing? We kind of talked offline about this, but how are you nurturing your faith currently?
Well, I think that it's taking that time to get still
Mm-hmm.
and to think about what's important to you. I think, like, when we're talking about health, um, like, it's a matter of, like, this concept of stewardship, of taking
Yes.
care of something that's been given to you. This is a gift of life, and health isn't everything, but without health, health is nothing. Or
Right.
everything that feels like nothing. Excuse me.
Yeah, I knew what you meant.
Health is everything, but without health, everything feels like nothing. In
Mm-hmm.
the sense that when we lose our independence and autonomy and ability to care for ourselves and care for others, it's a shift to have to be dependent on somebody. And so, as a physiatrist, a physical medicine rehab doctor, that's one of, like, the themes of, like, what is a physiatrist? We help improve people's function, but oftentimes it's after the apple cart has tipped over. So where people have had the stroke or had the brain injury or had the ailment that's impairing their function and quality of life. But the way that I try and nurture, you know, um, God into my life is to pray, is to perpetually study, to unlearn, some of the things that perhaps are automated and habitual ways of thinking and behaving,
Mm-hmm.
and realize that, like, to remember that, like, we're on this planet spinning around in the middle of nowhere, and it's so vast, and the and kind of we sometimes resist the reality before us, and that's where a lot of struggles in life exist, when we're resisting it and not accepting it. Like, it's almost
That's
like
good.
surrendering, trying to surrender to the reality before you.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a routine of of having some of that stillness in the morning, waking up, walking,
I know you're big into
meditating,
meditation. Yep. Yep.
and meditating. Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea of meditating is to try and to pay attention on purpose in a particular way, but there's also there's so many layers to it and facets to it. In the same way nutrition helps you in so many different ways, meditating is also just something very simple to
Hmm.
do, but there's also something to it in regards to dialing in to your breath.
Especially in such a
um
busy world, where
yeah our mhm.
Mhm. I was
Yeah,
just going to say, because of such a busy world, it's like we have to be really intentional for prayer and meditation as well. So it's important.
yes, it's a muscle,
Hmm.
to develop faith, to develop to and it's a journey. It's not a matter of getting somewhere. There's
Yeah.
always another mountain to climb. There's always another peak to get to. It's about evolving. And so that stillness and slowing down, there's a, a neuroanatomical explanation to a neuropsychological explanation as to why it helps, but it has an effect on a lot of those other aspects of affecting our microbiome, affecting our stress response, improving our blood flow to certain parts of our body,
Right.
to boosting our immune system, affecting our DNA, turning on good genes, turning off bad genes. These are like this concept of like sirtuins that they talk about, like this. It's like our genes are like a loaded gun, but it's our lifestyle that pulls the trigger.
Mm.
Our genes are like the lights in our house, but it's my lifestyle that is me turning on the switch or off the switch for that light to turn on or for that gene to express itself. So the same thing with making the habit, and this is kind of how it all started, was that if I wanted to try and change my life, then I could maybe change the way that I'm thinking, and I could maybe change the way that I'm thinking literally by trying to just sit and meditate for 10 minutes,
Hmm.
and then upon doing that, I realized that, well, maybe I'll change the way that I'm eating, and it all kind of snowballed, like just
Yeah.
one thing after the next. And it was
That's good.
it was pain and emotional strife that kind of, and also just a sense of shame, in the sense that, like, I didn't feel like I should feel that way. Like
Mm.
I didn't, but that's how I was feeling. It was
Wow. I'm glad
how
you
my
actually
my
said that, because there might be someone listening right now that has experienced that same thing. Actually, I think we all have. Let's get real. But I'm glad you're being authentic with that. Yeah, that's huge.
yeah. So I So ultimately, it's when I think about, I guess, like about God and Jesus, I think about, well, he was this person that, suffered such a painful death,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
for us,
Yeah.
for
Pretty amazing.
you know, yeah, as a savior. So it's humbling, and
Yes.
to try and think about how to try and follow in his footsteps,
Oh my gosh, you're like
you
making me
know.
cry right now. You're so emotional too. Yes, because it's
Sorry.
hard to no, but honestly, Evan, it's so hard to even fathom that God loves us that much, that
Right.
he would come here on earth in a human form as Jesus and die on the cross and take all of our sins away because of the pain that he had to go through, so that we could be with him for eternity. Like, it's mind blowing. And so it's that receiving. Going back to the love, it's that receiving of his love that, man, it's sometimes that's the biggest obstacle for many, is just, how do I receive? And that's all he wants. He just wants us to be intimate and to receive him. And it's really quite simple, but it's up to us. Just like all these other steps for optimizing our health, it's not by chance; it's by choice. And
Right. And
because he's a
mhm.
loving father, he's not going to make us do anything. It's like, if you choose to come to me, I'm here. I'm always here. So I love
Right.
who you are, Evan. You're a good man.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Thanks. Yeah, health by choice, not by chance. And that
Yeah.
was initially the name of my lifestyle medicine practice. It was
Mm.
I had kind of like a trigger for this was my wife and I had lost a baby, and so this band called Mumford and Sons had a beautiful song called Tim Shell,
Mm.
and apparently Marcus Mumford was very influenced by not only God but John Steinbeck. And the book East of Eden, he writes about this a Hebrew word called timshel. It doesn't exist in English, but it translates into thou shalt. So and then he goes on to say it might be one of the most important words in the world, because if thou shalt, then thou shalt not, meaning man has a choice. And then I kept
Mm.
seeing, like
Mm.
in Franklin Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, or Susan David's Emotional Agility, or Jordan Peterson's work. It's all like,
That's great.
between this, and it comes from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, a Jewish
Such a
man,
great book.
who, between the stimulus and the response, there's a space, and within that space lies our freedom to choose.
Yes.
And I'm working alongside Scott Stahl,
Yes.
another physiatrist who actually hired me outside of fellowship, and
Hmm.
kind of shined his light, and I kind of saw what he was doing, and got interested in lifestyle medicine. And he, when giving his presentation, he said, "What's one of the most important gifts that you have?" And it's the gift of the power of choice, that we could choose. And so how do you choose skillfully? How do you create that space? So in the morning, I'm trying to like cultivate that, but we get pulled in, and we get sucked in by our emotions. But how could we, what is within my circle of control to to try and be a Jedi, to be a master at this? And it's like, well, I could sleep better. I sleep better, then I'll have more resilience and more patience, and I'll literally will have a certain hormonal balance where I will choose better foods. When I'm
Yes.
sleep deprived, I'm literally craving more foods. And even if the same food that I was to eat on another day where I was well slept, my metabolism is messed up. So that food is actually more fattening,
Right.
even though it's
Right.
the same amount. So it's just so it's just, it becomes a virtuous cycle where,
Yeah.
I feel good, I sleep better, I move more, and then I love more.
Yeah. That's
Right?
so
And
good.
that is ultimately, it's not trying to look good at the high school reunion.
Right.
It's
Right. It's beyond
it's
that.
when it becomes when it has a deep meaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it becomes sustainable.
Yeah.
You know,
That's so
that's
good.
where the change is. Where, is has its real, like, overdrive.
Hmm. That's so
But it's
good.
those small little hacks that sometimes get things moving,
Yeah.
where
That's
that's
awesome.
okay too.
Yep, it
Yeah,
is. It is. And everyone's different and on their own journey. But I appreciate you so much. And thank you for sharing your wisdom here today on Visibly Fit. I've got just one little question for you
sure.
because I see a guitar in the background and I'm just curious. Do you play
Yes,
the guitar?
I could dabble a little bit,
Really?
but
Okay, I didn't know that about
I could
you.
dabble a little bit,
All
but
right.
nothing that I would want. nothing that's all
You
that
don't want to
impressive.
play us, you
Play
don't
a
want a
couple of
jam
songs.
session with us?
No, I couldn't rock out like that
All right.
for a
All right.
podcast. And that one, but my daughter is learning guitar,
Oh,
and
fun.
so and that was my guitar, and I lent it to her, and now it's broken. So, but I do love music. As I said, I love, you know Marcus Mumford and Mumford and
Yeah,
Sons. I love
that's
that
so good.
music. I love the feeling that it evokes, and
Yeah.
that connection
Well,
to
music
feeling alive.
actually helps with our health as well. In fact, praise and worship, and when we're worshiping God, we can worship Him in all kinds of ways, of course. But when we're worshiping Him through song, it's one of the highest elevated ways in which we can worship. And so there is something very powerful about music, and just the vibrational frequencies in which it contributes and puts out, and our cells actually receive the frequency as well, and we respond accordingly, and even our just our physiology will change, and our biochemical makeup will change based on music. So it's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
and even and so sometimes there's like just a simple, meditation where you're just counting your breath,
Mm.
but sometimes internally you could just say, God, but you could say it, in a long, deep way in your voice, because
Sure.
you could an auditory hallucination where with each breath you're just saying that, and all it is when you just do that and you're focusing on just one thing, the thoughts kind of keep coming sometimes, but sometimes they slow down where you're able to kind of just cover your attention on the breath and
Yeah.
on just that mantra or
Yeah.
on just the counting. But it's another way that I will sometimes, I'll read scripture and then I'll sit and meditate. My Aunt Patty is not Jewish,
Uh-huh.
and she's of the Catholic faith, but she does a type of meditation that is involved with her with a Catholic, a Christian way or a Catholic way of meditating. I'm not doing this any justice,
That's okay with
but
her
she said
Catholicism.
prayer is us
Yeah.
talking to God,
Yeah.
but when we get still and meditate, it's us listening,
Listening.
you know,
You're
to
absolutely
God.
right. Yeah, that's so good. You're awesome. I appreciate you so
So
much.
are you.
And I look forward to seeing you soon in Orlando, actually, for the next health immersion. But thanks for taking the time here today and sharing your wisdom. And I will make sure to put your website in the show notes. But thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Visibly Fit. And check out, Dr. Queller and all that he has to offer with his website. Also, check out getvisiblyfit.com if you're looking for a 7-week program to better your health as well. You know where to find me. But we appreciate you. And as always, we want to tell you God bless and we thank you. And we'll catch you same time, same place next week on Visibly Fit. Blessings. Okay, just as I had dismissed Dr. Queller and signed off, he said, "Wait, I have a rebate code I want to give everybody. So I want to make sure I give this to you. If you are interested in the Dr. Q Fast Kit, it's normally $297, but he's so kind. He said if you put in all capital letters, it is case sensitive, all capital letters, Visibly Fit, all is one word." You can get the 5-day fast for $199. So that's huge. That's almost $100 savings. So just wanted to give that to you. We'll also put that in the show notes. But just wanted to end with that. So thank you and God bless. And we will talk soon. Hope this episode blessed you. And we'll catch you next time. Well, that's a wrap for today's show, so thank you so much for tuning in. I love spending this time with you. To learn more and get more free resources, just head on over to wendiepett.com, and thank you in advance for sharing this episode and this podcast, following and subscribing, not only to this podcast, but finding me on social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are, I'm probably there too. Until next week and our next podcast time together, make it a Visibly Fit day.